The illegal economic sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe by the United States and the European Union violate fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter. Shame, 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 we say, to the United States of America. Shame, 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 we say, to Britain and its allies.
Have you ever estimated how many buffalo bags it would take to carry $1 trillion of money? My guess is a lot. But what if I told you that there is a country whose currency denominations would allow you to carry up to 100 trillion in your wallet? Zimbabwe. The country's largest denomination banknote was first printed in 2008 as a way to keep up with the depreciating currency during the then economic turmoil. Among the many reasons that landed Zimbabwe in this economic instability were international isolation and a devalued currency resulting from Europe's and America's sanctions. This foreign involvement left a story untold, one of resilience and determination. Join us on a journey to unveil the hidden realities of Zimbabwe's struggle, where a tough spirit prevails against all odds. I hope you are ready to discover these untold narratives when Asinga unfolds. Today, Zimbabwe continues to evolve and face various challenges, but its remarkable geography and cultural heritage remain at the core of its identity. If this is your first time learning about this country, don't worry, because in these coming few minutes, I'm going to tell you things about Zimbabwe that will make you feel like you're born there. That is just one of my few promises, but of course, stick around for more. Situated in southern Africa, Zimbabwe is a landlocked country that is popular for its captivating landscape and a rich cultural tapestry. For those of you who enjoy safaris, Zimbabwe is bordered to South Africa to the south, Botswana to the west and southwest, Mozambique to the east and northeast, and Gambia to the northwest. Geographically, Zimbabwe showcases diverse features that contribute to its natural beauty. The Eastern Highlands region is characterized by picturesque mountains, lush forests, and cascading waterfalls such as the enchanting Mutarazi Falls and Bridal Veil Falls. The Central Plateau dominates the country's heart, consisting of rolling hills and vast grasslands, dotted with granite outcrops known as kopjes. The Zambezi River, forming Zimbabwe's northern border with Zambia, is home to the awe-inspiring Victoria Falls, one of the world's largest and the most captivating waterfalls. The country's cultural heritage is deeply rooted in its ethnic diversity. The Shona people, who are the largest ethnic group, are renowned for their ancient civilization and artistic achievements, but also their stone sculpting, which has gained international recognition, and of course, their traditional music, dance, and storytelling. The Ndebele people, who are also descendants of the Zulu kingdom, have a vibrant cultural identity characterized by distinctive house paintings and intricate beadworks. But it's not just the Shona and the Ndebele people. Zimbabwe's broad ethnicity has more groups such as Tonga, Chiwa, Kalanga, and many more, who collectively contribute to Zimbabwe's rich cultural mosaic, but each with their unique traditions and customs. Traditional ceremonies play a significant role in Zimbabwean culture, serving its important occasions for communal celebration and spiritual connections. These ceremonies often involve elaborate rituals, traditional attire, dance and music from unique traditional instruments such as the mbira, otham piano, and marimba being widely used in Zimbabwean music. adding a distinct sound to the cultural landscape. Zimbabwe has a storied history that includes ancient ruins of Great Zimbabwe, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that is also a testament to the country's medieval civilization and architectural prowess. In the beginning, however, there was no piece of land with actual borders named Zimbabwe. You see, before the arrival of Bantu speakers in present-day Zimbabwe, the region was populated by ancestors of the San people, who were the first Bantu-speaking farmers to arrive here during the Bantu expansion of about 2,000 years ago. Fast forward to the 1600s, white settlements were starting to happen in several parts of southern Africa, and as they integrated, interest in precious minerals like diamond and gold grew, and then mining took on. During the 1880s, the British South African Company, established by a British imperialist and businessman Cecil Rhodes, was pushing inwards for more mineral deposits and growing famous. Later, the company was granted a royal charter by the British government, giving it authority to administer and continue to exploit territories in southern Africa, including what is now known as Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. The company had a significant impact on the region, shaping the political, economic, and social dynamics of these territories. However, the company's rule was marked by conflict with local populations and controversies surrounding land appropriation and labor exploitation. Over time, its influence and power diminished, eventually leading to a transition of the region from company rule to direct British colonial administration. Later in 1923, a landlocked self-governing British Crown colony was formed in the region and given the name Southern Rhodesia. Under British rule, Southern Rhodesia experienced significant changes. The colonization led to the deposition of land from indigenous communities, resulting in forced labor and conflicts with the local populations. The British South African Company implemented policies that primarily served the interests of the colonizers, while suppressing the rights and freedoms of the locals. During the early years of this evil rule, the economy was all about mining, particularly gold and diamond, which brought wealth to the colonizers, but had minimal benefits for the local population. As the colonial administration solidified its control, commercial agriculture, especially tobacco farming, would gain prominence, with large tracts of land owned by white settlers. White minority rule then intensified with the unilateral declaration of independence by the Rhodesian government under Prime Minister Ian Smith in 1965, which aimed at maintaining white minority rule in defiance of the British government's efforts to promote majority rule. However, the struggle for independence intensified under the influence of various nationalistic movements such as the Zimbabwe African National Union and the Zimbabwe African People's Union. Due to international pressure and economic sanctions in 1980, an agreement was reached between the British government, the Rhodesian government, and the nationalist leaders. As a result, an independent Zimbabwe emerged, conducting the first ever free elections that saw Robert Mugabe becoming the country's first prime minister, who later became president in 1987 until 2017. It was then marked a significant turning point in Zimbabwe's history as the country transitioned into the independent nation that we know today. The era of British colonial rule in Zimbabwe had a profound impact on the country's social, political, and economic landscape. It even shaped land distribution, brought new racial dynamics, and powered numerous structures, something that continues to influence the country's challenges and aspirations, even now. As the second president to rule this resource-rich nation, Mugabe implemented various policies and programs that aimed to address key issues and contribute to the development of his country. Some of his notable contributions included prioritizing education and healthcare, as his government made efforts to expand access to education, especially in rural areas, and increase literacy rates. Investments were made in building schools and training teachers. Similarly, Healthcare services were expanded with the establishment of clinics and hospitals across the country. Second, Mugabe's government implemented a land reform program aimed at addressing historical land inequalities inherited from the colonial era. The program sought to redistribute land from large-scale commercial farms predominantly owned by white minority to landless black Zimbabweans. This goal of land redistribution was largely welcomed, but implementation faced challenges, such as disruptions to agriculture production and allegations of corruption, human rights abuses. Third, Mugabe's government introduced various social programs to alleviate poverty and support vulnerable populations. This included initiatives to provide food subsidies, housing assistance, and healthcare subsidies for the marginalized sections of society. Fourth, Mugabe was a vocal advocate of Pan-Africanism, who also fought against colonialism and imperialism. He played an active role in regional and continental affairs, advocating for African unity and decolonization, but also supported liberation movements in other African countries, providing both moral and material support. Last but not least, under Mugabe's leadership, efforts were made to develop infrastructure across the country. This included the construction of roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, and other public facilities. These infrastructure projects aim to improve connectivity, accessibility, and the overall development of Zimbabwe. Because of these key contributions, Mugabe is considered a great revolutionary, a hero who fought racial oppression and stood up to Western imperialism and neo-colonialism. But to others, he was an evil dictator who should have ended his days in jail. Due to some shortcomings along his journey, Mugabe's administration was characterized by so much negativity and poor criticism from the collective West. But even before independence or during the colonial era, the United States supported white minority rule in Rhodesia due to Cold War dynamics and concerns about communism. However, as the independence movement gained momentum, the United States shifted its stance and supported the transition to majority rule in the late 1970s. After Zimbabwe gained independence in 1980, the United States established diplomatic relations with the new nation. Initially, the relationship was positive, and the United States provided development assistance and supported Zimbabwe's government, led by Mugabe as the Prime Minister. America has been a significant donor of economic assistance to Zimbabwe. Over the years, it has provided financial aid, development assistance, and support for various sectors such as agriculture, health, education, and governance. This assistance aimed to promote economic growth, improve living conditions, and strengthen democratic institutions in Zimbabwe. As the years went by, concerns emerged regarding issues such as human rights abuses, erosion of democratic institutions, governance challenges, corruption, and the rule of law in Zimbabwe. The United States, like other countries, expressed criticism and raised these concerns through diplomatic channels and international forums. In response to perceived violations of human rights, erosion of democratic values, and concerns about governance, the United States imposed targeted sanctions on specific individuals and entities in Zimbabwe. These sanctions included travel bans and asset freezes, primarily aimed at those believed to be involved in human rights abuses, corruption, and undermining democratic processes. In addition to the imposition of sanctions, the United States has also engaged with Zimbabwe through diplomatic channels, dialogue, and negotiations. These engagements have aimed to encourage the government to address concerns, promote reforms, and improve the overall situation. In other words, advocating for democratic principles, respect for human rights, and the rule of law in Zimbabwe. It is true that the impact of sanctions is always a complex and a debated topic due to differing perspectives on their effectiveness and unintended consequences. That being said, sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe since the 2000s, particularly by the United States, and other countries have had various impacts on the country in general. Let's look at the economic consequences. When looking at the economic consequences and how these sanctions have hurt Zimbabwe's economy, you'll find that restrictions on trade, investment, and financial transactions with targeted individuals and entities have limited economic opportunities, not only for the targeted, but for the masses, since it was made almost impossible for Zimbabwe to attract foreign investment, access international financial markets, and obtain loans from international financial institutions. But what about businesses? Sanctions have affected the overall business environment in Zimbabwe. The limitations on trade and financial transactions have disrupted supply chains, reduced foreign direct investment, and hindered the growth of millions of businesses. Therefore, the business community has faced difficulties in conducting international transactions, accessing technological resources, and expanding their operations. Because of that, sanctions have impacted the government's ability to generate revenue, because restrictions on trade and investment have reduced tax incomes and limited government's capacity to finance services and public development, something that has strained public finances and hindered the government's ability to address social and economic challenges. Furthermore, sanctions have had indirect social and humanitarian impacts on the general population. Remember, restrictions on trade and financial inflows have contributed to economic challenges, including high unemployment rates, inflation, and limited access to essential goods and services, meaning the most vulnerable segments of society, such as the poor and the marginalized, have been disproportionately affected. But not just these fields. You see, sanctions have influenced the political dynamics in Zimbabwe. Targeted sanctions, particularly on individuals involved in human rights abuses and undermining of democratic processes, have put pressure on the government to address these issues. Unfortunately, the move strained relations between Zimbabwe and countries that are imposing sanctions. Now, all that we have covered so far shows that the economic nature of Zimbabwe is in bad shape. But there is some good news. Despite the challenges posed by sanctions and economic difficulties, Zimbabweans have displayed remarkable resilience and adopted various coping strategies to navigate their circumstances. As of today, many Zimbabweans have turned to entrepreneurship and the informal economy as a means of generating income and sustaining their livelihoods. The country has seen its small-scale businesses and informal trading flourishing, allowing individuals to find alternative sources of income outside of the formal sector. This resilience in entrepreneurial spirit has helped individuals and communities to adapt and survive despite economic constraints. On top of that, agriculture plays a crucial role in Zimbabwe, and many Zimbabweans have resorted to farming as a means of ensuring food security and generating income. Yes, there are challenges such as limited access to resources and climate-related issues, but individuals and communities have embraced innovative agricultural practices, including urban farming, community gardens, and small-scale farming initiatives. Zimbabweans have relied on strong social support networks within their communities, families, and extended networks, sharing resources, providing mutual aid, and supporting one another during challenging times have been crucial aspects of coping with the impact of sanctions and economic difficulties. Did you know that Zimbabweans increasingly participated in communal sharing of food, resources, and assistance? But it's not just that. Investing in education and skills development has been another effective coping strategy for many Zimbabweans. Despite economic constraints, the masses have sought opportunities to acquire new skills and pursue higher education as a way to enhance their knowledge, a move that allows them to adapt to changing economic conditions, explore alternative employment options, and improve their prospects for the future in this harsh economic space. There are more coping strategies that I might not get into because of time, so feel free to drop them, or whatever that is, down in the comment section. But the one I cannot leave out is that Zimbabweans have shown resilience and perseverance in the face of adversity. I mean, there are many challenging circumstances, but still, many people have found ways to remain hopeful, maintain their cultural traditions, and preserve their sense of identity and community. I think that kind of resilience is reflected in their rich cultural expressions, artistic endeavors, and community initiatives that continue to thrive in their country. While Zimbabweans have demonstrated resilience and adopted numerous coping strategies, the impact of sanctions and economic difficulties continues to present significant challenges, meaning that life in Zimbabwe after sanctions has presented both ongoing challenges and, of course, glimpses of resilience among Zimbabweans, as we just learned. But there have been more issues that even led to a more baffling problem, and that, my friends, is currency instability. Now, in this next segment, I might come off as someone who does not credit Mugabe at all. But don't get me wrong, it's just that there are also some uncomfortable truths that I cannot simply ignore. You see, from 1980 when he was the country's prime minister to 2017 when he was the president, Mugabe's leadership was characterized by poor economic policies and mismanagement. Alright? Something that played a significant role in triggering hyperinflation. We all know that excessive government spending, high fiscal deficits, and unsustainable monetary practices such as printing money to finance government expenditures can cause a rapid increase in money supply, which is exactly what happened in this case. And then you look at the land reform initiatives that aimed to address historical land imbalances in land ownership, a move that disrupted agricultural productivity and caused a decline in agricultural output. I know that seizing commercial farms was a good idea, that was only fair, but seizing them and redistributing them without proper planning or support adversely affected agricultural production. Yet, this was a critical sector of Zimbabwe's economy. In addition, the decline in agricultural productivity brought about by land reform policies and other factors also led to food shortages, reduced exports, and increased reliance on imports. It is fair to say that the disruption in food production contributed to raising prices and hyperinflationary pressures. Mugabe's administration also recorded concerning levels of political instability and governance challenges in Zimbabwe, which played a role in exacerbating the hyperinflation crisis. The erosion of property rights, lack of investor confidence, and limited foreign direct investment further weakened the economy and contributed to hyperinflationary spiral. The management of the national currency, which is the Zimbabwean dollar, was another factor contributing to hyperinflation. Frequent currency devaluations and excessive printing of money without corresponding economic growth or productivity later on led to a loss of confidence in Zimbabwe's currency and accelerated inflation. But at the top of all that, Zimbabwe met arguably the most economically crippling external factor that worsened their currency problem. I'm talking about sanctions. Hyperinflation in Zimbabwe is generally considered to have started in the late 90s, specifically around the late 90s to early 2000s. While the exact point at which hyperinflation began is not definitive, this period marked a significant increase in inflation rates and the erosion of the value of the Zimbabwean dollar. Before 1980, the region used what is known as the Rhodesian dollar, which was then replaced by the Zimbabwean dollar. At the time when Zimbabwe gained its independence from the United Kingdom, the newly introduced Zimbabwean dollar valued more than the United States dollar at the official exchange rate. However, that did not reflect reality because in terms of purchasing power on the open and black markets, it was less valuable, primarily due to the higher inflation in Zimbabwe. During the 80s, Zimbabwe faced economic challenges such as a rupturing public debt, where a sizable part of it was inherited from Rhodesia, and more related issues that laid the ground for hyperinflationary crisis that followed. However, it was in the early to mid-2000s that hyperinflation accelerated rapidly. and then led to astronomical inflation rates. After experiencing a period of hyperinflation that spanned a few decades, currency instability came to a climax in 2008 with the introduction of the 1 trillion banknotes. At the very peak, inflation rates reached extreme levels. During this time, monthly inflation levels were estimated to be in hundreds of millions %, and prices of goods and services were rapidly increasing, sometimes daily. Neighboring African countries often take a nuanced approach to the United States' involvement and sanctions in Zimbabwe. For example, some countries have expressed concerns about the impact of these sanctions on the Zimbabwean economy and its people, which is why they have also called for lifting of the sanctions to allow for economic recovery and development. They argue that sanctions, particularly those targeting key individuals and entities, have caused unintended consequences, including negative effects on the general public. Some African countries have even called for more constructive engagement and dialogue to support Zimbabwe's economic recovery and political stability. The African Union and regional organizations such as the Southern African Development Community have generally advocated for a peaceful resolution to Zimbabwe's challenges and have emphasized the importance of respecting the country's sovereignty. These organizations have encouraged dialogue, mediation, and the promotion of stability and inclusive governance in Zimbabwe. The broader international community's views on the United States' involvement and sanctions in Zimbabwe can vary. Some countries and organizations support the imposition of sanctions as a means to address concerns related to human rights, governance, and democratic principles. All others view these sanctions as a way for America to exert pressure and undermine self-governance in Zimbabwe, promote neo-colonialism, and earn a share on the country's minerals. Amidst the challenges brought about by sanctions and other hardships, the Zimbabwean people continue to demonstrate remarkable resilience, strength, and determination. I admire their ability to cope and persevere in the face of adversity. It is an inspiring testament to the human spirit, and I think that through their resilience, Zimbabweans are inspiring with their unwavering spirit, and I can see that they will continue to work towards a better future for themselves and their country. If you know so much about Zimbabwe now more than when you started watching this video, it means that I have delivered on my promise, and as I did in the next video. You have been a wonderful audience. I thank you for watching.